So, the main focus with this presentation is managing absenteeism, turnover, and retaining staff. These subjects can really be a part of any kind of environment that hires people and has staff members, but we're focusing on the nursing side of it. What does it mean, first of all? Absenteeism is the failure of an employee to attend work, whether it is on purpose or randomly that an emergency arises and they can't come. Um, a lot of the time they measure absenteeism by the number of hours that are lost per employee and as a total staff for that day. Turnover is when an employee leaves an organization of employment, sometimes by choice or even if they are forced out. Employee retention is the ability to keep staff members, and that really shows a lot about that place of employment, because if they're not able to keep staff members, something's not working for that employer. Staff are not happy, or they're just not finding what they need at that place of employment. Absenteeism. There's a lot of different factors that can contribute to absenteeism. Personal factors, workplace factors, organizational factors. Some examples of personal factors are someone gets sick, someone's child gets sick, some family member, there's an emergency and they have to care for them, or they're even caring for themselves because they're sick. Or sometimes it's just that they don't want to come to work for whatever reason. Workplace factors can include issues with other employees, with management. Sometimes they're just not getting along and people don't want to come in because of that. It can create a very hostile environment, and that can cause more call-offs. Organizational factors are sometimes just the way the schedule is. A lot of times staff members can advocate for themselves to have a certain schedule, and then the schedule comes out and they don't get it. And that affects their personal lives. There have been a lot of noted patterns within hospitals. Seasonal for sure. During certain months of the year, people are more likely to call off. A lot of the times it is due to sickness, and then sometimes in the summer it's because they want a day off in the sun. Patterns with certain days of the week. Sometimes people are more likely to call off Monday or Friday to extend a weekend. Demographics really has to do with where they lie with their age. It does have a lot of factors. A lot of the time they say that younger employees are more likely to call off than older employees, just because of their dedication to their work and the way that they were raised, like they're in their decade. Workload and nature of work. A lot of employees are more likely to call off or not attend work if they are in a very critical unit and there is a lot that they have to give forth every day and it's tiring. Any kind of change that's within the hospital or organization that they're working at can also affect absenteeism. People don't really do well with change, specifically employees, and when there are changes, they don't want to come because they don't want to accept it. Some other contributing factors, financial incentive. If For instance, on weekends, typically there is a shift differential that the employee will get more money for working a weekend, especially a holiday. They get more money. So a lot of the times they are less likely to call off on the days that they are going to earn more money, because they know that if they call off that day versus another day, that they could earn more money instead of calling off on a day where they're just going to be getting base rate. Like I said before, younger versus older nurses, the way that they were raised and grew up, older nurses, they say, tend to be more strict with coming in no matter what. Younger nurses are sometimes accused of calling off for not good reasons. A lot of times that's just speculation because each person is different. Personal plans. A lot of the time people will make plans, and then if they can't get off work, they call off anyway. Psychological effects and fatigue. A lot of the time that has to do with the work that they do in the hospital or organization. Other units are sometimes tougher on employees if they see a lot of death and dying, It's hard for them to cope with, and it does cause fatigue with that job, uh, especially if you're working double shifts, or even night shifts. It does tend to affect the circadian rhythm for people, and it can cause an increased fatigue because it's not what their body is meant to do, working all night and sleeping all day. Staff shortages as well. A lot of the times, if staff know that they're going to come into short staff, they just call off anyway because they don't want to have to deal with the extra workload of picking up for an employee that had already called off. So then it causes even more staff shortages. Turnover is leaving the job or profession. A key indicator of effectiveness in facilities. It means that a lot of the time employees ask when they're hired, they ask other employees, like, do people stay, to kind of figure out if this is a good place to work. In nursing, there is a severe turnover in new hires, and sometimes it's in new nurses as well, but a new hire is defined as less than a year of employment. A lot of the times in nursing, there is a very high rate of new nurses leaving their first position that they were hired for straight out of a nursing school, and even leaving the profession altogether. Employee satisfaction is also a huge part of turnover. If the employee is not happy, they're not going to want to stay. And sometimes that can be financially. There's a lot of factors that go into that, and we'll cover that in another slide. Turnover is very expensive for the hospitals. But calculating turnover cost is very challenging because there's a lot of different factors that go into it. Nursing orientation for each individual can be longer or shorter, with experience and how many years they've been in the field. They like to factor in how long orientation was and how many certifications they've gotten. The longer the orientation, the more money it's going to cost to orient that nurse. And then all the certifications that they send them for. A lot of the times nurses say that they leave a certain job because they feel that their orientation did not prepare them to work on that floor or unit, or that they feel that they weren't given enough certifications prior to starting on their own. High turnover often goes undetected until it's at its worst, and the staff are struggling to keep the unit staffed. Some other factors that affect turnover, like I just said, is staffing. If you're constantly working short staff, that's not somewhere where you're going to want to continue working, because you're doing double the work with half the staff. Job satisfaction. If an employee is not happy with what they're doing or what that job offers, they're going to leave. Other nurse attitudes has to do with the other staff members affecting how staff members feel as a whole. Negativity can go a long way and really affect several people, like a domino effect. Compensation and benefits. If a hospital doesn't offer good insurance or pay rate or any kind of school reimbursement, if a nurse is going to go back for their bachelor's or master's, that also affects where someone's going to work and why they will leave to go to another hospital. And that kind of ties in advancement opportunities, what they're allowed to do. Any certifications that the hospital can send them for also affects that. Professional relationships, a lot of the time that has to do with direct coworkers, but it can have to do with management as well. If they don't have a good relationship, they're not going to want to stay because they don't feel comfortable working with them or working for them. Retaining staff. There's a lot of ways that hospitals try and work to retain staff. Some big ways to promote employee retention is trust, loyalty, safety and security, support, and appreciation. And that has to go with the coworkers and management as well. If you can't trust the people you're working with, or if you can't trust the people you're working for, you're not going to want to work there. The more trust you have, the more you'll want to stay, and that kind of ties in loyalty as well. If you know that your manager's not going to stick up for you, you're not going to want to work for them. If they are going to stick up for you, a nurse is more likely to stay with them. Safety and security, that has to do with job security as well. If they think that, it's going downhill, they try to get out fast so that they still have a job to put food on the table. Support and appreciation from management as well as other staff members. They want to feel like they are making a difference and they are part of the team. If they don't feel that what they're doing is important, they're not going to stay in that job or position. Overall, nurses want to be cared about just as much as they care for other people. They want to be reassured and reminded that they're making a difference in other people's lives. And if management doesn't convey that to them, if they're constantly putting them down, talking about how this can be improved and this can be improved, they're not going to want to stay because they're going to constantly feel like they're being put down. It also goes with the kind of leadership that they provide. Two types of leaderships that tend to work that they found is authentic and aesthetic leadership. That is a core, it builds trust with the employees and loyalty in order for them to follow that manager and believe in what they're saying and what they're all about on that unit and what they're trying to establish. A video link about call-offs, we're going to look at that.
And everything has changed. No longer do nurses have enough time sometimes to...
This one. There we
go. There has been a call out. We have no coverage and you must work.
But my son is homesick. I need to be there.
You cannot go home. If you leave, it's patient abandonment and you risk termination.
I have been here for a full shift. I have obligations at home. I cannot stay.
If you do not stay, you will be written up. Since you have not stayed in the past, you could be terminated.
You cannot write me up for not staying. I have not gone to the bathroom yet or eaten lunch, and I'm a day shift nurse. We always eat lunch.
You stay or you are fired.
You know, you are always giving us a hard time. I wish you would just lay off.
If you don't like my approach, you could always request a transfer to another unit or simply resign from your position. There has been a call out. Is there any way you could cover?
My son is homesick. Let me call my mother to see if she can relieve the babysitter. Okay, my mother can watch little Johnny for 4 hours so I can cover half of the shift.
Thank you so much. It is greatly appreciated. I will find someone to cover the rest of the shift and you will get another vacation day. Also, I will cover your patients for half an hour while you get something to eat and take a break.
I love working on this unit. Never have I worked with a more supportive manager or team.
It is a pleasure having you as a part of the team. You always seem to come through for us.
So that's a really good clip that, even though it's an animation, it just kind of summarizes how employees may feel about call-offs and being obligated to work. Those are two different conversations, and they are extreme, but it does show how in the one they feel like they're being forced, they don't feel like they're being appreciated, and then the next one they feel like they're being appreciated, their management is supportive of them and they can trust that management. And the manager even offered to cover, so that she could go for lunch, so that's a big deal too, that they feel like they're getting treated fairly. Second video is about retaining staff.
To give long, leisurely, complete bed baths. On busy days, sometimes we barely have time to give baths at all. On tough days, sometimes we go home at the end of our shift with achy feet and achy hearts, feeling like the care we gave was the best we could do, but it wasn't enough that day. So no wonder there's the nursing shortage. We also have a nursing shortage because we can't educate enough nurses fast enough to teach them. And we also have a shortage in this nation, believe it or not, because some nurses are quitting. Now, why they'd rather quit and work someplace else